This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, with my normal partner in crime. Hey, where the hell's Aaron Quinn?
He's gone.
So, guys, welcome. You were joining Greg with Anthony Prohaska. Anthony, what's going on, man?
Good day today. Miami takes the loss, and it's on the same day that I get to make my debut here on the main show, the flagship show of the Cover One Sports Network with you. And I know all shouts out to Aaron. I hope I can fill his shoes as decently as possible.
I'm confident you will. Aaron is enjoying some well-deserved time with his family today during the bye week. So we're going to dive right in. We're here today to talk about the how the Buffalo Bills were impacted while not playing football. So that's kind of a fun and exciting way to go through it. So I was planning on going, right off the bat, 1 o'clock games, 4 o'clock games, but it's going to be silly not to talk about the biggest game of the week here. So before we dive in, just want to say thank you. Presented today by Uncle Jumbo's. Make sure you guys go check out their goodness all over the place there in Western New York. You can order it online. I'm hearing rave reviews about the new orange cream soda. I haven't had a chance to have that or the root beer yet. I'm looking forward to it. Going to come check out some myself. And then our friends over at West Her, if you need a vehicle, make sure you're finding them. Tons of fun to be able to dive in and go into it here. But, like I said, we're going to go through each of the games, where everything fell. The most important piece today is the Buffalo Bills are standalone atop the AFC East because Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos upset the Miami Dolphins. So, Anthony, I know you and I were going back and forth online and watching that game live. What were some of your thoughts initially watching that game after the hysteria of all the media, kissing Miami's feet with this 5-game winning streak?
The Broncos start out with the ball, and of course on the first drive, it's an interception, and I'm like, here we go again. It's just been...
At one point, Tua was 1 of 4 for 3 yards and a touchdown.
Of course. All these just... it's oxymoronical, but all these consistently unsustainable plays that Miami has been having, and I'm just like, again, and then they score, and I'm just like, how many times can they continue to just pull these horseshoes out and continue to live like this?
Punts, an interception return for a touchdown.
Yep. And then Drew Lock is missing wide open guys. But as we churned along, the Denver run game got solid. Shout out to Phillip Lindsay and even shout out to Melvin Gordon, although he tried to make things very difficult.
2 touchdowns. He did make me nervous. We'll get to that in a moment here.
Very much so. But yeah, when it started, going into it, I said it on the pod. And actually, I think we said it when we did that super show on the Hoof podcast earlier in the week. Don't be surprised if Miami wins their next 3 games against Denver, the Jets, and Cincinnati. Yep. And I was thinking the same thing once Burrow went down. Shout out to him. I feel so terrible.
It was bad.
It was gross. Once Burrow went down, I was like, well, that's another victory for Miami. And now going into this game, Denver gets the win, and they've completely flipped everything on its head.
Yeah, and it's really fun. So we'll go through here. Obviously, Denver jumped out pretty early, but it was back and forth. So Miami scored first. Denver answered right back. Went into halftime 13-10. Denver. They scored again to go up 20-10 and had pretty decent control. All of a sudden, early fourth quarter, you see Tua on the sideline. And he's standing there and looks okay. We've heard some reports that maybe it was his foot or his ankle, but he stood there cheerleading pretty well and looked pretty healthy. And Ryan Fitzpatrick came in the game and immediately leads them down for a score. They get 3 points to cut it to 20-13. Denver's defense again looked okay.
Yep.
And then, they get the ball back. There's about 7 minutes to go. And all right, Denver needs to put together a drive. They can put this away. They're up 7. They're driving down the field. Everything's going great. Melvin Gordon ends up 15 carries for 84 yards. Looks really good. He's going in for a game-clinching touchdown. And the man fumbles the ball on the 1-yard line. To now, in our lifetime of experience with this, give Ryan Fitzpatrick 99 yards, down 7. It was the ultimate Fitzmagic drama. It was perfect. And to go through that, I don't have it yet, but I have a couple friends that I do some shows with that do shows for Miami that I'm going to ask them, if you are honest with yourself, down deep in your soul, is there any chance you think Tua would have led that 99-yard drive? Like, the result beside itself, do you really feel like Tua could have led that 99-yard drive to give you a shot there? Because, of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick gets first down after first down after first down, gets down there with 2 minutes to go, taking shots into the end zone, and then does throw the ultimate Fitz-tragic interception to Justin Simmons, that we saw so many times. I'm sure that they're going to say it was an injury and that he wasn't ready, but he looked okay. Let me say this in a different way. For any other team losing in that scenario within a score in the fourth quarter, if their quarterback had the same foot ankle thing, that Josh Allen gets it taped up and goes back in the game. Matt Barkley's not coming in that game. Anybody else gets it taped up and goes back in that game. So they can decorate it and sprinkle it as an injury all they want. They benched Tua because they thought Fitzpatrick gave him a better chance to come back. Yeah,
Tua wasn't looking good. He, for the majority of the game, was checking things down. He didn't look sharp. And then he gets hit on that play. He gets sacked. I saw his foot bend underneath him. I saw the foot get caught. But it didn't look bad enough, and then he got up, he popped up, and to your point, he's standing there on the sideline. He's not getting treatment. He's not off to the side. He's not doing anything. And
the guys here are confirming, Eric, Jason, Patrick, all confirming here that Flores said afterwards that he was not taken out for injury, that he was benched.
Adds to the drama then, because Fitzy gets pulled earlier in the year when they're looking good, and then Tua.
And some in that locker room were not happy about it at the time.
Correct, because I think we're the perfect example of it. Everyone in Buffalo, we still love Fitz. Like, I don't think there's a soul that exists on earth that doesn't like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Any Bills fan that says they didn't have that pit in their stomach when Fitz had 99 yards left and the ball down 7 is lying. Like, all of us felt it like, oh God, he's going to score.
But is there a drive or a single series that is a more picture perfect embodiment of the Fitz magic, Fitz tragic dichotomy? Like, starts from his own one, picture perfect down the field, and then as you get closer, he almost got picked a play before when he threw it up to Gesicki in the corner, and then it gets picked by Simmons right after, just the guy who will take you to the dance and then at the last minute bail and throw up all over your dress. Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he does what he does to help the Bills out, his favorite city.
And the chat is fantastic here. Patrick saying obviously that of course they're going to go back to chat. I put out tweets just twisting the knife a little bit that, now that Miami's moved on from the Tua era and turned the keys over to franchise cornerstone Ryan Fitzpatrick, really interested how
where do we go from here?
Yeah. So obviously that, of course they're going to go back to Tua here, but you're kidding yourself if that's not, just that little chink in the armor in Tua's mind that, oh man, coach felt like he needed to pull me here because I couldn't bring the team back. You're kidding yourself if you think that's not a seed that's planted in the back of his mind.
Especially in a very winnable game on the heels of comments five straight. And then the comments of, like, I thought it would be harder.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
He's never going to hear the end of that.
What a horrible comment to make. And now you get pulled and, just not a good look. And it's funny how fast things can change just with one game going into this week. The Dolphins were the darlings and Tua and Miami were the sexy team and the sexy pick. And now all of a sudden there may be a little bit of some fires down below.
Aaron, appreciate his generosity, man. And he's not wrong. Like I don't think Tua is Josh Rosen. Like, I don't think it's quite that far, but like, that's just crazy that you're in the game and they felt like their best chance to win was pulling you from the game.
Yeah.
And you could see why, because the line wasn't doing a great job. They were not protecting Tua. They were putting him in a bad situation. And Flores knew Fitzpatrick could get out of it better and could process what the defense was doing while the pressure was coming. It's not that Tua can't get away from the pressure. He's as good of an athlete or better than Fitzpatrick. Mm-hmm. He's not ready to do both. He's not ready to evade the rush and process the coverage. Fitz has been doing that for 20 years. Like, Fitz
it's his go-to.
So like in a purely strategic sense, it was probably the right call by Flores to say, hey, I think he gives us the better chance to finish this game. And the results proved it out. He got them down there and was taking shots into the end zone to be able to tie the game. And I don't think Tua would have done that. I think he would have taken another sack or two. I think he would have kept them from getting down the field. And that's still all those things. It's going to be really interesting how Miami bounces back from there. So as we're looking at the reason that was such a big deal is that the Bills are now 7-3 in the East, 4-0 in the division. The Dolphins are 6-4. They're 1-2 in the division. They're also now 3-3 in the conference, and the Bills are 5-2 in the conference. Yes. The Bills also have a win in hand in Miami. All those things, the division record at 1-2, the conference record of 3-3, the Bills are 4-0, the Bills are 5-2, plus the win in Miami. All those things are stacking up to now put it where Miami basically now has to run the table the rest of the way going into that final game to get to where they have to have a full game up on us going into that final game to win. Because if the Bills tie and the Bills win that last game, they win every tiebreaker. Even if it's within a game and Miami wins the final game to tie the record, the Bills have all the tiebreakers. So the Dolphins basically have to be up a game and win the final game to be able to clear the Bills by a full record or have a tied record and go up by a full game to get there, because all the tiebreakers are falling back for Buffalo. So that was why that was the biggest game today for anybody who was
it was huge. Now they're like a game behind us in the win and the loss column, but like you said, it's technically like a 2-game lead based on every single tiebreaker fashion falling into Buffalo's hands. It was massive from that logistical standpoint of the standings and the records. But again, that emotional aspect, Miami was riding this wave of momentum of like, oh man, everything's working out great for us and we're the talk of the town. And to have a bad loss surrounded by some interesting on-field decisions, it's kind of enjoyable for us right now.
Yeah, Lone Wolf was asking here, can the Jets beat Miami? I don't know that I'm quite ready for that, but the Jets were a game team against the Chargers here. I mean, they were going in. Flacco had them being able to take a shot into the
Joe Flacco's elite
6. So separate from that, the Bills obviously are going to come back from the bye next week playing the Chargers. The Chargers got a win against the Jets, but only by 6 points, and they let the Jets hang around in that game the entire time with Flacco taking shots into the end zone as the game was going on there. So
they didn't get a lot of pressure. Bosa, they double teamed him a lot and chipped him, but he wasn't really getting there. He got frustrated because of his lack of sack production, that he got a couple rough in the passer penalties on Flacco. Ingram wasn't getting pressure. I started the Chargers defense in fantasy, expecting them to destroy. There you go. We're the same. Expecting them to destroy the Jets more than they did. I know they got a pick 6, but they didn't have the amount of frenzied plays and chaotic disruption against the Jets offense that I expected to see going into that game.
Yeah, for sure. I was expecting a dominant performance.
Yeah.
I thought, especially knowing Bosa was coming back, having Bosa and Ingram, I assumed that was going to be a dominant performance where Flacco crumbled, not them putting up 28 points and being in that kind of position. I was surprised that they let him hang there. I actually honestly like that the Chargers got to win. They're not coming off of a loss going into Buffalo. Now going to have to come out on the road to come out to Buffalo after giving up 28 points to a terrible Jets offense. I feel like that's a great situation. So I'm not all the way at thinking that Miami's going to lose to this Jets team, but
that would be great.
I don't hate the idea that they're obviously not giving up. So the franchise is going nowhere. They have horrible coaching. They don't have a talented roster. The guys who are showing up on the field are not tanking. I'll listen to the fact that maybe the organization is trying not to win. The guys who are showing up on the field, they're not giving up. They are playing football. They're going out there trying to accomplish things. That is something that I think you can feel confident in. So I at least am happy about the fact that I think Miami's going to get a game next week out of New York. Of course, they're probably going to win because I don't expect New York to win any games. One of the other games...
Poor New York. I don't expect them to win any games.
I don't expect them to win any games. One of the other games that was impacting the Bills here has just ended while we're live on the air, and the Indianapolis Colts have kicked a field goal in overtime to be able to beat the Green Bay Packers, who I believe started with the ball and fumbled, to be able to go through there. So I'm checking real quick to make sure. Yes, they started with the ball in overtime. That is game over. So that means that the Bills will retain the number 3 seed in the AFC. the Colts will be the leaders of the AFC South and the 4 seed, because one of the other games that people were talking about a lot, I know, I'll ask you your opinion of what you thought was better, was with Tennessee and Baltimore. So on one hand, Tennessee has the head-to-head win, so having them lose is a good thing no matter what. In my head, even though they're 6-4 now and haven't looked great, I still see Baltimore as the more dangerous and the better team from a talent standpoint. So a piece of me wanted them to lose and to be able to just maybe even knock them out of the playoffs. So I think I get the math. I think that Baltimore winning would have been better just to give Tennessee a loss and avoid any head-to-head win tiebreaker issues. But I'm not heartbroken that Baltimore got a loss. So what were your thoughts on Tennessee going to 7-3 and Baltimore dropping to 6-4?
Similar to what you were saying there, it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If it comes down to who the Bills are playing, I would much rather, especially because we've seen them already, I'd much rather play Tennessee in the playoffs than I would play the Baltimore Ravens.
I'm not nervous about either. I think we can beat both. If I had my choice, I'd take Tennessee.
Agreed. Same thing. I'm fine playing either, but I'd much rather play Tennessee. That being said, because they have the head-to-head and that seeding preference that I would much prefer to be higher than lower, I guess maybe like if I had to break it down in percentage, 52% I wanted Tennessee to lose, 48 Baltimore. It was real close. Because again, I'm thinking forward as much as possible, and I know you are as well. We're trying to think of, what are the final seeds going to look like? What's our first round matchup going to be? What's our seeding going to be? And how does everything shake out? And so there's so many factors, but there's also a little bit of an emotional factor. As I was telling you offline, I hate Tennessee. I don't really like Baltimore either, but I hate Tennessee much more than Baltimore. So that played a little, but just from a pure logistical standpoint, yeah, it was close, and you can make a case for both sides, but I would have preferred Tennessee to lose.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that I get the math. I think that it was technically better, but I'm not sad that Tennessee got the win, because no matter what, they come right back next week, Tennessee versus Indy. That game is going to matter. That's the game we need, because then if Indy beats Tennessee there, gives Tennessee their 4th loss, takes a game lead, plus has 2 head-to-head wins, that's a huge tiebreaker for them to end up being the AFC South champ. I'm not nervous about playing the Colts, so I'd be fine going up against them. I think that's certainly a scenario that the Bills can root for. So that one, with the Colts winning here today against Green Bay, again, I think that technically it would have been better for the Colts to lose that game and then beat Tennessee next week. For fans who just want to mentally see the Bills as the 3 seed going into next week versus the 4 seed, it is going to look like that now, because the Bills are going to have the tiebreakers up on Indy. So they will be the 3 seed going in here, regardless of the rest of the outcomes, because the Chiefs play the Raiders tonight. That's another one to root for. We want Las Vegas to beat Kansas City to give the Bills a shot at that 1 or 2 seed. Yes, and getting a loss on Kansas City would be huge. But that's another one to be able to watch for here with that game. What were your thoughts watching the Patriots sink into oblivion?
I saw him go up early on the Harris touchdown, and I was thinking, I know Houston struggles and they haven't looked great, and New England goes up. Seeing them go down in the way they did, going up by 7 and then basically just being outscored left and right as that game finished, and watching Deshaun Watson carry multiple defenders into the end zone on a rushing touchdown.
He took Devin McCourty's soul on that one touchdown.
He took him for a ride. He put him in the back of his backpack and carried him in. It was
sadly we've experienced a little bit of that, but
yeah, we have. We're not going to talk about that though, because this is a fun time. We don't want to do sad things. Yeah, to see them, it's still shocking for me I know Brady's gone and things are different, but looking at the standings and seeing them sitting there at 4-6 right now is wild. And they're effectively, granted, some crazy things can happen, but they are, for a decent amount of intents and purposes, dead in the water when it comes to playoff picture, especially for the division, but playoff picture and the conference as a whole, they're 75% in the casket with dirt being poured on them as we speak.
Oh, yeah. And Jason makes an awesome point here. So all the fans that kept talking about New England was done, Miami's going to go on this 8-game winning streak and automatically already getting to 9-3. it's a week-to-week league. Crazy stuff happens. Cincinnati beat Tennessee. Like bad teams win all the time. Like it's not automatic. And you saw that twice today. The 2-7 Texans took it to the Patriots, who were on, just beat Baltimore and were looking really good. There was also a double dip benefit to there. So one, this fully ends the Patriots season from 4-6. There's no mathematical path where they can realistically come back. Now being 10th in the division, 11th even. I think they're tiebreakers behind Denver after Denver's win.
They are.
They're not passing all those other teams to be able to get up there. So going through that path, the Patriots season is done. Plus, the Texans win now puts them up into a slightly better record, which now from a draft standpoint hurts Miami. So Miami was going to be getting a much stronger pick, and that drops them from what was probably the 3rd or 4th pick in the draft down to the 8th or 9th pick in the draft. So every Houston win, we could get another one here for them to pass the Giants, the Eagles, the Panthers, the Niners, get them into the teens. And with Deshaun Watson, I think that's very feasible that they could be getting there. So as we're counting up those easy records for teams, there's some upcoming games with the two against the Colts and 1 against the Titans that I'm not betting against Deshaun Watson in any of those.
No, I hate to jump on the bandwagon of ragging on Bill O'Brien, but since O'Brien has been gone, Watson looks completely different. The offense looks different. Brandon Cooks is getting involved left and right. A healthy Will Fuller has been a welcome addition for that offense. There's a possibility that you could see them taking a game from Tennessee and Indy as we go down the stretch. I don't think you can count out Houston, as bad as they've looked in multiple areas, but you can't count them out.
They're winning one of those games. I don't know if they win all 3, but they're not losing all those games. They're going to pick off 1 or 2 of those games.
That's fair. And especially if they're not going to be going to the playoffs, there's going to be some sort of added oomph for those games to be like, let's try and, get a pound of flesh from everybody else in the division if we can. And with Deshaun Watson on offense and JJ Watt on defense, you always have the opportunity to come away with a win against a decent amount of teams that you come against. And I don't think, despite the difference in record, I don't think Indy or Tennessee are so invincible that it's ridiculous to assume that they could lose to Houston. I think we could see that.
So there was a couple other games today. I mean, in theory, if you think that the Bills were somehow going to drop out of the division, you would have wanted the Eagles to beat the Browns, because anytime you have an NFC opponent against an AFC, I'm not terribly worried about that. And to be honest, I like the Browns winning games because I'm not worried about playing them in the playoffs. So if the Browns make it in as a wild card, I welcome it. It will make my life very interesting for that week living in Cleveland if the Bills are hosting the Browns in a playoff game.
Baker looks so bad.
Oh, yeah. I'm really not nervous about that team. I know that there's some, people have thrown out some things being worried about their running attack, and that's not an awesome matchup. But
I was one of them.
I'm not worried about outscoring Cleveland in a playoff game. So I hope they keep stacking wins, and I hope they're right there in the seeding. Looking through the rest of them, technically on Thursday night when the Seahawks beat the Cardinals, that helped the Bills' strength of victory tiebreaker. Same thing if you want to root for the Rams over the Buccaneers tomorrow night, that helps the strength of victory tiebreaker. It's pretty rare that it comes down to those things, but every little bit helps if you just want to know what games help the Bills here or there. Tonight is similar to the Tennessee-Baltimore game where there's 6 one way, half dozen the other. Kansas City beating the Raiders and knocking the Raiders down a peg just to be one less team to compete with. I can see that. I think that it's better for the Bills for the Raiders to win, give the Chiefs another loss, have a chance to take them in seeding, and then that's another strength of victory tiebreaker with the Raiders having a better record and moving forward. And again, another team that I don't mind seeing stack wins because I'm not nervous about playing Las Vegas in the playoffs either. I'm totally fine with them being our matchup as well.
Yeah, I would. We spoke about it on the show earlier this week when we did the Super Show on Cover One. I think a lot of us would prefer to see Oakland, based on how things were shaking out at the time, to see Vegas again in that first round, just because we'd seen them and how their roster stacks up and what they're good at and what their strength and opportunities are. I think Buffalo matches up well with what they do. And yeah, that's not a matchup to fear come the first round.
Yeah. So right now, if the playoffs were to start today, the Bills would be the 3 seed and would be hosting the Cleveland Browns in Buffalo. The Cleveland Browns are the current 6 seed. If Las Vegas wins tonight, they would go to 7-3 and would take the tiebreaker, and the Bills would be hosting the Raiders in the first round. If the Chiefs win and knock the Raiders down, the Raiders would actually fall out of the playoffs, and the Ravens would be the 7 seed. And what a weird turn that would be if the Chiefs end up being the 2 seed, or the Steelers, if they stumble at some point here, and your reward as the 2 seed is, hey, it's 2020, you don't get to buy anymore, and you get to play Baltimore in the opening round.
Oh, such a bad way to go through. And yeah, to face a team like the Ravens, who I think we all can easily see and agree that Baltimore is underachieving this year.
Wise. Like when I'm worried about playing a team in the playoffs, I'm worried about what's their best case scenario, what's their ceiling. And if I'm worried about Cleveland coming with their A game or Las Vegas coming with their A game, if Buffalo comes with their B+ game, they win both of those games.
Yeah.
If Baltimore comes with their A game, the Bills have to have their A game.
Yeah.
I think they can still beat them, even A game versus A game. But if the Bills stumble and don't play great and Baltimore's playing well, that's more what my concern is, that, hey, that's a team that I know has the capacity for that kind of.
Oh, 1,000%. That's my thinking as well. What is, when you get into the playoffs like that, my first thing is always matchups. Like, how do you match up in that scenario? And then 2, what does their best look like against your best? And I think our best can hang with Baltimore's, but their best is, especially on offense, is decently close to a juggernaut, and it's far higher than any of the other bests from Cleveland or Vegas or anything like that. And to speak again on tonight's game with the Raiders and Chiefs, root big time for the Raiders. I know the Chiefs are ahead of us and the Bills are sitting in 3, but the Chiefs go through the rest of this year. They still have to play Tampa Bay. They have to play the Saints. There's a possibility with a couple of the games they have, maybe the Chiefs slip up a little bit and they end up with 3 or even 4 losses. And if the Bills can potentially run the table, which they have the capacity to, the Bills have an outside, they got a puncher's chance at the 2 seed, and, root for the Raiders. It helps in every single way, and knock the Chiefs down an extra peg.
Well, heck, I mean, if you're even going, best case scenario, they have a head-to-head game with the Steelers coming up here. The Steelers play the Ravens. The Steelers play a game Washington team. They're not good, but they're not a rollover, and they still play the Colts and the Browns. So obviously, the Bills have to beat the Steelers. Correct. But if the Bills beat the Steelers and then they also get 2 losses out of Baltimore, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Washington, there's 2 losable games within there. It's feasible that if they're tied, then the Bills would have the better tiebreaker with the head-to-head win. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it's likely, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to be able to go in and pull off a top seed there. So
no, definitely not.
Worth looking at it each week.
That's what's part of the fun, I think, of this year, in addition to the Bills being good and having these legitimate championship odds. The AFC, how much everybody plays each other going down the stretch, there is so much potential and possibility for maneuverability from seeds like 1 all the way through 9. Everybody can move around, and even just the potential, you spoke about it briefly, going into that Thanksgiving game with the Ravens and the Steelers. If the Ravens win, cool, that's awesome. Steelers go down, gives us more chance to catch them. But if the Ravens lose, then, oh man, looking at them being 6-5 and even more on the outside looking in, there's so much storyline potential week to week in the entire AFC. It's fun.
Absolutely. And it's something like, before we jump into some questions here, go ahead and send us some questions in the chat. We've already got a couple lined up here. Just to run through where the Bills' remaining schedule is, they're going to come back from the bye next week at home against the Chargers. They'll be favored in that game. They're going to go on the road to the 49ers, which I'm much less concerned with than I was at the beginning of the game, but I caution people, they're getting a fair amount of guys back here. And that Raheem Mostert is supposed to be back. I don't think George Kittle's going to be back, but it's possible.
Sherman will be back.
Yeah, I still think the Bills should win that game, but that's a tough game. Then they're going to go right back after that and play the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. That's obviously the game of the year remaining, maybe in the AFC overall, let alone for the Bills' schedule. Then they're going to play at the Broncos. I think that they're a game team as well. They're not something that, I think that the Bills will probably be favored in that game, even though it's in Denver, but it's probably going to be a 1 or 2 point spread, and it's a tough game that they're going to have to pull out. Then they're going to be at the Patriots, so back-to-back road games. Again, I think they'll be favored in New England, which, when's the last time the Bills were favored in New England?
Crazy.
And then they're going to come back at home versus Miami in a game that all Bills fans are hoping doesn't really matter anymore. I think with how close the jockeying is in seeding, it's very likely that the Bills could have that final game not matter, but I think it's pretty likely it will. I think it's pretty likely that it's going to matter in the overall seedings, and that it's very likely the Bills are going to want to go after the Dolphins in that matchup.
Yeah, and I wonder who will be the starting quarterback by then. I mean, I know Tua is the guy going forward, but we'll see what happens from Miami. So intriguing. But yeah, I think with breaking down how the Bills go for the rest of this year, it's a really interesting and intriguing schedule as we go through. I would expect, knock on wood, we beat the Chargers. I know the Niners are going to get some guys back, but they come in limping so much. We should be able to take out San Francisco. And then that Steelers one is the one that I think everybody and their mother has circled. How do we stack up against them? And the Steelers are an interesting team. I know what the final score was against Jacksonville today, but the Steelers have this ability to play down to the level of their opponent. That
game was close for a while.
Yes, it was 17-3 for a while. It was 3-3 for a while. They barely got out of Dallas with a win last week. It's really interesting to see what's going on with Pittsburgh. And if the Bills can get a win on that, it's massive for everything going forward and just for what it really means, what they can accomplish.
Yeah. So Lone Wolf asking a question here. Do you think the Bills need to get their running game going in order to make a deep playoff run? I'll let you give it a shot.
Ooh, I commented on this earlier in the week. You and I were in discussions with somebody on Twitter about it. I would prefer for their running game to get somewhat more consistent. I believe everything comes in balance, proper balance. And again, I don't think we need to be a team that has to run it, 30 times and pass it 30 times. I think the passing offense is successful enough to carry this team, but we need to be effective when we do run the ball. That's been the biggest thing. I don't think it has to be a 50-50 split. I'm fine with the 70-30, 80-20 ratio that we want to run. I mean, we proved it game in and game out that when Allen and the passing offense is on point, we can go toe-to-toe with literally anyone, and it's hard to keep up with us. But I think the effectiveness when we do run needs to improve. I also think a lot of it comes down to the offensive line. I'd like to see what the line and the running game looks like in an ideal world with Dawkins, Ford, Morse, Feliciano, and Darrell Williams. Let's see what that goes before we pass final judgment on the running game is dead in the water and struggling. What are we going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you guys check this out in the comments here. Eric did an amazing breakdown of the running game issues, how we got into this point.
It was fantastic.
And I think that it's unlocked on cover1.net, so make sure you guys go check it out. He spoke about how a lot of people are conflating the third down issues with some just abstract lack of halftime adjustments, or we take our foot off the gas, or we're not emotionally ready. And a lot of it is execution in the run game, in that we're going into halftime with the lead an awful lot of the time. That's a great problem to have. We don't need to, and I think that PJ said it well here, just like you said, we're not looking to pivot and become a running team. The Bills are not going to be a running team. The Bills have been, at points, the pass happiest team in the NFL. But when we do go to run, we need it to be effective. You need that to be a tool in the tool belt that you can go to when you need it, and we can't afford for guys to get blown up. Now, you brought up the point that I think is the biggest one. There have been 0 snaps this season where we have had Cody Ford, Mitch Morse, and John Feliciano on the interior of that line. I want to see that line out there for the final 6-game run here, all healthy, all ready to go. Road graders that are in there. Cody Ford hasn't been great, but he's a good run blocker.
Yes.
He's an above average run blocker. He still needs to work on his footwork. It's not perfect in the pass game, but he's a damn good run blocker. John Feliciano is a better guard than he is a center.
Yes.
Mitch Morse is the best moving center in the NFL. He gets out in space better than any center in the NFL. All of those things allow us to just have one more card to play in the run game that gives us that option just to keep defenses honest. We're not going to all of a sudden pivot into some 50-50, run happy team. And I think Lone Wolf has a good balance there. I want 65-35. I'll take 70-30. I just want the 30% of the time that we run the ball, I want it to go for 4 or 5 yards, not -2. That's all I need. Just don't give me second
just
and 12.
Don't be terrible.
Just be okay, and we'll go from there. I brought up the third quarter woes. Patrick here asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerning is our persistent third quarter slump? He's at a 6.5.
Ooh, I think the third quarter slump I think it's legitimate to a degree, but you had a really good point on the old Twitter that so scoring for quarters gets counted based on when you actually score. So the Bills have had multiple drives that have ended in points, start 5. There you go, as Greg's hand shows for those of you watching here on video. 5 drives that we've scored in the beginning of the fourth quarter, like right in the beginning of it, that if you just move those to the third quarter, the ratio of second half scoring is very balanced and very even. So I think
the way the math works out, the Bills have right now scored 30 points on drives that ended in the third quarter and 92 points on drives that ended in the fourth quarter. 5 of those, the majority of it and the vast majority of the yards were in the third quarter, and a couple of them, it was literally 1 or 2 plays into the fourth quarter for 31 points, 4 touchdowns and 1 field goal. Eric actually found it. There was a touchdown called back in the Jets game that ended up being a field goal that would have been a touchdown. It would have been 5 touchdowns and 35 points. So if you take those drives, that means 62 points have been scored on drives that started in the third quarter, and 61 points have been scored on drives that have started in the fourth quarter. So the balance is much less tilted than people perceive it to be, and that does it really matter if they scored with 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter or with 2 minutes left in the third quarter? I get it. I want it to go away like I wanted the 300-yard passing game thing to go away last year. I knew it didn't matter, but it was such a thing in the Bills' echo chamber that I just want them to have a dominant third quarter for people to be like, oh, good, we fixed it. This is awesome.
Oh, McDermott can't do matchups. He's getting out coached in the third, and the defense can't adjust, and the offense doesn't know what to do. They can't figure it. It's like, no, it's not those things.
Yeah. Now I will say I want it to go away. I'm not saying they've been awesome in the third quarter, because they haven't. They haven't been great. They've been. I think they've been closer to average and not terrible. And no different than people come at me saying the Bills have the worst defense in the NFL, and I always say, if you haven't looked around the league much, everybody's defense is terrible. The Bills are 17th in yards and 18th in points against. That's not great, but that means there's 13 or 14 teams worse on defense. Nobody's defense is that good in 2020.
No, they're also 17th in defensive DVOA now after being 23rd before playing Seattle and Arizona. So they went up 6 spots
against
in DVOA.
2 really good offenses.
Exactly. The defense, I think we get, as Bills fans, I know it exists in the back of my mind. That paranoia is always there for, like, when is the rug going to be pulled out from under us? So any type of, wart or deficiency that the Bills have, I think there's a tendency to blow it out of proportion as like the end all be all worst thing. Everything's on fire, burn it down, start over, and close up shop. And the third quarter slump, there is some feet there, and it's not ideal, but I don't think it's the fire sale that it's being made out to be.
Prophet Darian asking here, what's more important, run game or run defense?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I liked it.
Oh, I'm a defense guy, so I always want to say run defense. I'm going to say run game.
So, I know it's not this simple, but I was only half joking in the Chiefs game and some of the other games, in the Seahawks game and the Cardinals game. When that team runs against you, it's a gift. Anytime they run the ball rather than pass the ball, I'll take it. Now, I don't want to get the ball run down our throat at 7 yards a clip for 200 yards. I get it. That's demoralizing. But sometimes that kind of keeps you in the game when they're not taking 60-yard chunk plays to Tyreek Hill, and they're able to kind of keep you in it. And that's how the Bills, it was an ugly loss still. But if Justin Zimmer gets that fumble against, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they have the ball at the 28-yard line going in, that ugly game plan would have worked. And they would have had the ball at the 28-yard line down 6 going in. So I get it that kind of is a frustrating way to watch a game, but I would much rather have our run game working and have the run defense still be kind of ugly. I want both. I want them to fix both. But if you gave me the choice, I'd rather our offense keep working, because the offense is going to carry us here, not the defense. That's
exactly what it is. Like, in my heart, I want to say run defense, and I think they're both very, very important. But you've said it multiple times on the show here and on Twitter. I know I've said it on Disguised Coverage. This Bills team is an offensive football team. And with that being an offensive football team, they are a passing offensive football team. So anything you can do to supplement and or support that passing game, i.e. be effective in the run game, and being effective in the run game also leads to more passing success with how tremendous Josh Allen has been in the play action game this year. So I think strengthen what is already your strength, which is the run, which is the passing offense in the run game.
So here's one for you. Who do you think, so I'm going to ask you both. Who do you want to see at cornerback 2 the rest of the year, and who do you think we're going to see at cornerback 2 the rest of the year?
Oh, so my want is with my heart, and it's Dane Jackson. I've loved his physicality. I think his fit and his body type and his skill set is really a good, sound fit in the Buffalo Bills defensive scheme. And I like the readability he has from corner, and I love just how physical he is and what he's been able to do. So my heart and what I want is Dane Jackson. What I think that we'll see, and what also my brain says, is majority Levi Wallace with some Josh Norman mix in there from time to time based on what the matchup is and how each are playing. I don't think Dane has done enough, and I don't think Levi and or Norman have done so little that Dane has usurped them and gone around and taken that number 2 spot.
You're spot on. Yeah, I think that's exactly where my head is at. And I don't want to say, I want to make sure to be clear, I think Dane Jackson can give Levi Wallace a run for the starting cornerback spot in 2021. I think it's going to be those
Good
two
call.
and a draft pick going for that starting corner spot. And I think
Good
Dane
call.
Jackson's shown me enough that in our system, how they can Band-Aid together, scrappy, tough, hard-minded, but not elite athletic cornerbacks. He can be that guy. The communication and all the work that's gone into it and who they're going to trust down the stretch here, who Trey White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Taron Johnson know where the guy's going to be, is Levi Wallace. I hope that we see a 70-30 rotation. I'm okay if Dane Jackson gets a couple drives to keep Taron Johnson fresh. I want to see him get on the field. I want Dane Jackson to be active. I want him to be available if somebody gets dinged and hurt. I don't think he should start over Levi Wallace, even if I kind of would like to see it because the unknown, and we've seen flashes of his physicality. I still don't know that I'm ready to see him out in coverage in a playoff game against Tyreek Hill and things like that.
Yeah, he's done
I don't know if
good.
I'm ready for that.
He's done good. I think the one-on-one stop on DeAndre Hopkins on the first drive of the Cardinals game was awesome, and he's shown
Sticking his
well.
nose in there against DK Metcalf.
Big hit, the nice interception on the read that he made against the Jets. But at the end of the day, for as successful as he's been, which is good, and I'm right on board with you, I think going into 2021, I am extremely excited to see what he adds and what he can bring and what he can be. But the sample size on what he's done so far now, I don't think is enough to be like, yep, he's clearly the number 2. Let's put him out there and run out there and see what we got. Yeah, not yet.
Absolutely. So it's been a lot of fun here. If anybody has any more questions here, we'll take maybe 1 or 2 more before we get going. So, Anthony, I'll ask you, what are some of the things you are most closely watching or most interested to see down the stretch here? Maybe we'll try to pick one thing on offense and defense. I'll throw mine out there since I just threw this at you. On offense, both of mine are health related. On offense, mine is, can we get the 5 intended starting linemen back together with a good 5 or 6 game run to get that together? On defense, I'm going to go with, even though I think the cornerback spot is critical, it's with, can we get one more game of a Band-Aid from AJ Klein? Now get Matt Milano back, give him 5 games back to get right next to Tremaine Edmonds, and maybe we found a little bit of a niche from A.J. Klein as the blitzing linebacker. Yep. He's not Lorenzo Alexander, so don't take this out of context, but use him how we use Zoe sometimes as kind of that, hey, you're not sure who's coming here, but he's blitzing a lot more than what we're dropping him into coverage. I don't hate that idea. So those are the 2 that stick out to me. What are some things that you're watching for down the stretch here?
Those are literally my same 2 things. On offense, the health part of the offensive line is tied to the bigger thing for me, the effectiveness of the running game going forward. But I believe the effectiveness of the running game is tied to the health up front. So exactly to your point, what do we look like with that quote unquote ideal starting 5 going forward? How does it transform things? What do we look like? And then on defense, I want to see what we look like with Milano coming back. I think for as bad as the Bills defense has been this year, and when I say bad, I mean they have not, well, they've been bad, but they haven't achieved and reached the level of expectations that I think a lot of us set for them going into this year. But over the last several weeks, they've course corrected some things. They've got better in several areas. And as we continue to move forward and the defense gets healthier, i.e., Matt Milano coming back, who is so tremendously important to everything that the Bills defense does. Eric was fantastic. He did a breakdown in a thread that he put up on Twitter a while back that showed the disruptor role that Milano plays on the defense and how Tremaine Edmonds feeds off of that and how so many people benefit off of what Milano does. So seeing what the defense looks like going forward with him back, and we get several other pieces coming together as well, it's that health piece, because I think we've course corrected and adjusted a bit, and adding Milano into that course correction should, in an ideal world, elevate things even further.
I like it. So one final question here. We've got a couple different versions of it. Joseph asking, can you give us a rundown of how you think the rest of the games play out? Robert asking, how many do you think we win? So running it down here, when you look at home for Chargers, at 49ers, home for Steelers, at Broncos, at New England, home for Miami. In those 6 games, what are you predicting the final record will be for those 4, or for those 6?
I think the Miami game is the biggest wild card for me, because if things are tied up and dressed up and positioning doesn't matter and things are done and dusted, similar to how it was last year against the Jets in Week 17, I think that game could maybe be a loss if we're not playing our starters. But I see us beating the Chargers. I see us beating the 49ers. I see us losing either the Steeler game or the New England game. Everything else, I think, but I'm going to go with losing in New England. I think we beat Pittsburgh at home. We beat Denver. We lose to New England. And if we finish out going into that final game, I think we're 4-1. And then based on how things have shaken out, we're either 5-1 or 4-2 if we play the backups.
I like it. That's right where my head is at. I think that we probably drop one of the games that fans don't think we should, because it's a week-to-week league and weird things happen. I don't love Kyle Shanahan's run game against our defense. That's a tough spot. I think we can beat Pittsburgh. I think we're going to be really up for that game. I'm looking forward to it. I think we do win that game. I think we stumble in one of those games, at the 49ers, at the Broncos, at the Patriots. We go into that final week 4-1, and I think it will matter. I think that there's going to be enough seeding on the line that they can still lock down a 2 seed because of beating Pittsburgh. There's going to be in play, or that we want the 3 seed and don't want to fall to the 4 seed, and that game's going to matter, and that they beat the Dolphins. Ideally, to knock the Dolphins out of the playoffs. That would be really sweet.
Give it to me.
That the Dolphins have a chance to make the playoffs and the Bills knock them out of the playoffs in that final game. So you almost get like back-to-back playoff games leading in.
I like it.
And that I think we go 5-1 down the stretch to finish 12-4 and the best record in 25 years. And that go in there with hosting a playoff game, winning a playoff game, and hopefully going on a fun run. I'm not predicting that the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, but I think they're going to win a playoff game, and I think they can go on a fun run. Anybody who is also a listener to the Rock Power Report knows that my dear friend Drew Gear and I have a bet on the line of a white tablecloth, nice steak dinner on whether the Bills win a playoff game or not. And I can't lie, I feel really good about it, and it's going to cost Drew a lot of money.
Ooh, is that to buy that steak?
Yeah, it's going to be with drinks and sides and a very nice high-end dinner.
High-class dinner.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. So, all right, any other thoughts? For anyone who hasn't had a chance, I hope you saw how much we enjoy having Anthony as part of the Cover One squad here. He's fantastic. You guys should check out his show normally on Thursday nights. This week, maybe later on in the week, you're going to be going on Friday or Thursday this week?
Yeah, going on Friday this week, upcoming, because there's something on Thursday. I think it's called something about thanks and like giving it to people or something. So I won't be going on the regular.
That's my plan.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, because people will be giving thanks on that Thursday holiday, this guy's coverage will not be airing live on Thursday night. It'll be on Friday night this week.
I like it. Make sure you guys are checking it out. Anthony's doing a fantastic job. Make sure you check out our friends over at The Hoof. Thoughts and prayers going out to our man Sterling. He is struck with COVID-19 and is definitely feeling some of the effects of it. So obviously many people around us in our lives and families are very fortunate to be asymptomatic and be able to move through their lives and just hoping for the best. He's been struggling with some of these things. So certainly thinking of him, hoping he comes back strong and doing okay. So looking forward to all of that. Go ahead. I'm going to be rooting for the Raiders tonight to give the Bills a chance. I want the 1 seed. I want the bye. I want the best season in 25 years, and that includes getting a first round bye in my mind. So I'm going to hang up here and go watch the Raiders, root for them to upset the Chiefs. Hopefully we'll have some fun. Sounds like they've maybe got a little scoring drive in the works here, so we'll see where that goes.
Intrigue.
For Anthony Prohaska, for Greg Tompsett, thank you to Uncle Jumbo's, thank you to West Her, thank you to an awesome chat. You guys have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.